I'm going to pick up this morning pretty close to where I left off 2 weeks ago when I was here. And if you remember, that's great. If not, don't worry. All you really need to know is that we're talking about Jesus' time in the wilderness. Those 40 days where he spent in fasting and prayer and being tempted before he began his earthly ministry. We're going to be talking about our own wilderness times as well. Those times of doubt, of insecurity, of loneliness, and pain. This Lent, in particular, with the conflict in Europe following the 2 Lents that we spent in the pandemic, it seems appropriate to acknowledge that there are many of us who are still feeling as if we are in the wilderness now. During these wilderness times, just about everything is tested and called into question. And doubt is often part of that experience. Our cry in the wilderness is often the cry of the Father that was recorded in the Gospel of Mark. I believe. Help my unbelief. The cry of that Father seeking healing for his Son was not the first such cry, nor would it be the last. People of faith down through the ages, including the greatest Christian leaders of all time, they have experienced these periods of doubt in the wilderness time. And it's very unfortunate that we in the church today often dismiss or discount doubts as the product of an immature faith. Although I believe that sitting in this congregation, sitting in any Christian congregation on any Sunday morning, there are people who hold unresolved issues of doubt and faith. I often get people asking me if it's okay if they come to church or Bible study when they don't know what they believe. And the answer is, of course. Because it's in these places that we can share our doubts. It's critically important that the church be a safe place where these doubts can be raised, where questions can be asked, and all this can be done without the questioner feeling as if they are a second-class Christian. You see, I believe that the important truth is that doubt is often a part of the faith journey. And I believe if we're being honest with ourselves, most Christians experience it at one time or another. Especially during these wilderness times of hardship and conflict and illness. Maybe you're one of those Christians that experiences it a number of times throughout your life. That too is okay. Doubt is part of the Christian's journey, but doubt is not the destination of the journey, any more than the wilderness is a good destination. Jesus spent time in the wilderness. We spend time in the wilderness, but it's not intended to be a stopping place. Instead, it's to be a place that calls us to action, that moves us on and moves us forward, that helps us realize that there is a difference between doubting and giving up. That there is a difference between doubt and unbelief. There is an immense difference between wrestling with faith and throwing it to the side. There is a big difference between moving through doubt and getting stuck there and becoming a cynic or a pessimist. The healthy way of understanding doubt is to understand that it is part of our faith journey. And the key to doubt being a journey and not a destination is caring about God and wanting to move to faith, even if it means moving through these difficult times of unbelief. Of saying, quite frankly, to God, I believe, or I want to believe. Help my unbelief. The good news is that the doubt we experience in the wilderness times can actually be beneficial to us because doubt stimulates us and spurs us onto faith. Frederick Buechner once wrote, if you don't have any doubts, you're either kidding yourself or asleep. Doubts are the ants in the pants of faith. They keep it awake and moving. And it's very interesting that if we look back over Christian writing throughout Christian history, if we look at these people that we lift up as these pillars of the faith, we see that there are times in their lives when they have been among the most doubtful people alive. We tend to think of doubt as the opposite of faith. But I think really it's apathy that is the opposite of faith. The great theologian Paul Tillich defined faith as the state of being ultimately concerned. In other words, he said, whatever you are ultimately concerned with, whatever you are most concerned about, this is what you truly have faith in. And he says that we are called to be ultimately concerned only with God. To have faith in God. To have trust in God. And he said the opposite of being ultimately concerned is not to doubt, not to question, but the opposite of being ultimately concerned is to simply not care at all. To not ask these questions, to not want to ask these questions, to not care about what the answers are. If I'm ultimately concerned about God and my life in God, then my doubt will not destroy my faith, but help to deepen it and spur me on to resolve the doubts that I have. Doubt is not the opposite of faith, but a part of it. As I said, if we look at those lives that we consider the most faith-filled down through the ages, it would be difficult to conclude that doubt is destructive of faith or something to be avoided. Rather, we have to conclude that it's one of the marks of a strong faith. To have struggled with doubt, to have questioned it, and to have overcome it. I would suggest that perhaps that struggle is essential to having a mature faith. In the same way that the struggle of a butterfly emerging from a cocoon is essential to the strength of the new creature that it will become. So if doubt is part of the wilderness experience, what do we do with our doubts? I believe, first of all, we should not suppress them. Authentic faith begins with intellectual honesty, and doubt is the foundation of honesty. We should ask the questions. We should continue to search. We shouldn't let our doubts stop up these channels that lead us to God. But instead, we should let these doubts open these channels in a new way with new insights and new understandings. Pray to God the literal words of that father in the gospel again. Lord, I want to believe. Help my unbelief. Second, I believe we should stay involved with other Christians. I believe that we can learn a lesson here from the disciple Thomas, who voiced his serious doubts. He doubted that Jesus had been raised. He doubted that the other disciples had seen Jesus. And yet we're told that he kept coming back to the fellowship. He didn't write them off as crazy. He didn't ostracize himself because he didn't believe automatically what they believed. Instead, he kept coming as he worked through those very natural doubts that he was experiencing. And I believe that group support and sharing is a powerful way that we can share our burdens and that we can find support for moving through these periods of doubt. Finally, I think that we should continue to seek Christ and continue to seek faith in Christ. The issue for us is therefore never one of avoiding our doubts, as if hiding them or shoving them away will cure us of them. Rather, it's in continuing honest relationship with God. The prophet Jeremiah, speaking for God, says, "When you search for me, you will find me." Jesus said, "Ask, and it will be given to you. Search, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened for you." When we do these things, our periods of doubt and questions, our times in the wilderness, can actually lead us to new and to renewed, re-strengthened faith. In the early days of John Wesley's ministry, the founder of the Methodist Church, the Methodist movement, when he was experiencing a particularly difficult time of doubts and uncertainties, he went to his Moravian friend Peter Böhler and he laid his soul bare. And Böhler told Wesley, he said, "My advice to you is to keep preaching." He said, "As a matter of fact, preach faith until you have it. And then because you have it, you will preach faith." In other words, when you find yourselves in these periods of doubt, when you find yourselves at your lowest, keep moving as if you have already moved past it. And eventually you will come through that wilderness. You will come through that doubt. And you will find the faith, the joy, the renewed relationship with God that you were searching for. You will find it on the other side of the wilderness, on the other side of doubt.